Prison is designed to destroy relationships, and in this case, it had succeeded in destroying ours. Almost 6 years, 6 years nonstop communication. She had had my back. I had had hers to the best of my ability. And we had tried, we had fought through plenty of obstacles. One, we had met while I was incarcerated and she had worked at the prison I was at. Two, eventually she would have to quit her job in order to protect us. Luckily, she had a job lined up immediately after, looking back at that moment, by the way. Three, we had to overcome the obstacles of her walking into a prison where some of the staff from the other prison had now transferred and would talk about her. Not to mention the warden that was at the institution when her and I had started interacting was now here. Countless things. I, to this day, give her nothing but respect. I remember her coming into the institution for, events that they would let family come in, and COs from the same prison that she once worked at, where we had met, just grilling her and looking at her crazy. You know, it was a hostile situation. It was a negative situation. And to be honest with you, I felt guilty in those moments. I felt guilty that she had to go through that. I didn't think it was right, on top of everything that I knew she was facing on the outside of this. It was a lot. You mix in that with the fact that I was working around staff members now, and oftentimes the conversation, for whatever reason, would get shifted to my relationship with her. And no, I wasn't the one that always brought it up. And it would always come in the form of, light conversation. Hey, how you doing? How's the family? And then boom, how's your girl doing? And then the conversation would always be non-supportive. And the reason I'm saying this is because though I'm speaking about the moment when I was incarcerated, hearing people, that were my supervisors, staff members, speak negatively about my relationship, I will say, man, be cautious of what you allow to be said about your relationship, what you listen to. Because looking back, it did eventually have an impact on me when you're being told numerous times throughout the week, in so many words, oh, those relationships aren't real, or how do you trust her? It was planting certain seeds, and I had no reason not to trust her. I had no reason to really think negatively towards our relationship, but those conversations didn't help. I was in prison. I would entertain those conversations because, to be transparent, I was incarcerated. Any type of conversation outside of the prison was valued, priceless. So, yeah. That mixed in with mental health. I know for a fact I was in a full-on fight for my life when it came to depression. During these moments, the shorter I got, it was almost like the more depressed I got. And I guess it's because I became older and older in prison. There was no support, no true mental health support there. They would have support groups, things of this nature, but nothing to the point that would, elevate me into a position of healing or sustain me in a place of peace while I was in prison. I was losing my mind. I was losing myself, and it was impossible to hang on to her. And also, lastly, I dealt with the reality and fact of the matter that I did not know 100% for sure that I wanted her to come home to her. That maybe not necessarily to her, but just into a relationship. Maybe I wanted my freedom. Maybe I didn't want to have those types of obligations, because it's not just her. She also had children. And when you're dating a woman or you're with a woman that has children, that becomes your family. You help support, you help provide. That would be a lot of pressure on me coming home. And I've always been a strategic thinker, and some people say I'm overthinking or whatever, but I wanted it to be a fair situation for all of us. I didn't want to hinder or handicap or cause, their situation to slow down or be out of sync. Then I had thoughts about me coming home from prison, being with her, moving into the home where her children were at. It just didn't feel right. It felt off. And finally, with all these thoughts, that was it. I remember telling her, it's over. I mustered up enough courage one day on the phone, and it hurt like hell, but it had to be said. I knew that I wasn't going to be with her, and it was time to start processing that. And it takes time, but it needed to start now. I needed her to understand that we weren't working towards me coming home to her anymore. And I wanted her to know now because it was only fair. I still had time left on my sentence. I still was in a place where I had, 3, 4 years left on my sentence. And it wasn't like I was coming home tomorrow. And I would hope that that would help her easier process, me saying goodbye. But who am I kidding? You know, how hard could that have been in that moment where you have rode with somebody, had a man's back, stood with them, supported them for almost 6 years while he was incarcerated, had nothing to offer but words and good intention. And then 2, 3 years, 4 years, before he's getting ready to go home, he calls you and says, the arguments are too much. I could only imagine. But her being a real one, she said she understood. And I know she couldn't have been happy at that moment. Me not being there to help, us always arguing, stressing out. I mean, it had gotten bad. Bad to the point, I remember her coming to visit one time and only being there for 10 minutes before we ended the visit. Yeah, it was time to let go. And that's exactly what I told her. And maybe that was best because then she'd be able to work on her, and I'd be able now, for the first time in 6 years, to shift the focus back on me, not be consumed with the thought of what's going on in the outside world when I still had time left on my sentence. But now I could lock back in. I can hopefully get my mind back right, as they say. So maybe a pro would rise above the cons, so to say.